Okay. Hi, Lindsay in Newfoundland, and Candace in Toronto, and Gwen in Edmonton, and Cranla, of course, is in Stratford. We're just letting a few more people in, and I think we are about ready to get started. So, welcome, everyone. I am Judy Sims. I am the founder of the Expansive Woman Project, and I'm so excited to have Cranla here with us today. I'm going to introduce her in a moment. But first, for those of you who are new to the Expansive Woman Project, here's a little bit of what we do. So our mission, I'm just going to go back to sharing that slide again. Our mission is to help women stand up and take their rightful place in the world with confidence, clarity, and joy. What we do is help women spot the things that are preventing them from doing that, both internally within us and our beliefs and behaviors, and also externally in the world as well. So if you join the Expansive Woman Project, and by the way, membership is free and always will be, you will gain access to our weekly newsletter. We have lots of blogs and videos, live Zoom workshops like this one. We've got a few coming up in the fall, one around mindful baking, which I think will be really, really interesting, and one around menopause and coping with menopause. So if you're over 35, get ready and come and join us for that one. It's going to be fascinating. We have on the site a lot of free courses. I would recommend the Career Assessment Toolkit or How to Prioritize are two really great places to start. We also have some paid products on this site, so some self-paced courses where you can learn, for example, how to find your North Star or how to overcome imposter syndrome. You can learn about developing your own executive presence, dealing with difficult clients, lots of availability there, as well as our live online 6-week transformation. We are likely to do one in January of 2025. So if you're interested, you can join the waitlist now on the website. We also offer lots of connection to other women. So that's what we're up to here at the Expansive Woman Project. I do want to give it a shout out. Both Cranla and Candace J, who are on the call today, are advisory board members. So it's lovely to have them here. And also, if you're interested in learning more about what we do, you can visit expansivewoman.co, or you can reach out to me just directly at judy@expansivewoman.co. I'm very happy to hear from women at all times. So if you can or feel like it, please feel free to reach out at any time. Let's move on to the main event because I don't want to take up too much time. There are lots of really, really great things that are in store for you today. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Cranla Warren. She is an amazing, special woman. She is a former psychotherapist and mental health practitioner who holds a PhD in organizational psychology. Most recently, she held the position of Vice President of Leadership Development at the Institute for Health and Human Potential. And in addition to being an organizational psychologist, facilitator, and coach in private practice, she is also an external instructor at Toronto Metropolitan University. In fact, she has squeezed us in. She has just finished a 2-hour session with TMU, and now she's doing this for us. And tomorrow she's leaving for Bermuda, so she's really come through for us to provide us with this session today. In 2022, Cranla was recognized as one of the top 100 accomplished Black Canadian women, highlighting her commitment to mentoring women and girls to grow where they want to go, which is a phrase I absolutely love. And in addition to that, I can tell you that she is one of the warmest, most compassionate, insightful, fun and funny women I have ever met in my life. And it is a great honor for me to call her my friend. So we are very lucky to have her. Welcome, Cranla. Please take it away.
Thank you, Judy. Wow, that was such a lovely and warm introduction. I'm really thrilled to be here. I appreciate those who've joined us and those who may get to see the video, after the event. And I wanted to just take a moment. I did put in the chat that I'm signing on today from Stratford, Ontario, Canada. And I did want to say, I wanted to just take a moment of land acknowledgement for where I am, and the land on which I live and work and play is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Attawandaron peoples. And I'm grateful for their stewardship of this land. And we actually have a very powerful and thriving Indigenous community here. And as Judy said, my name is Cranla, and I'd love that you say it and pronounce it so beautifully, because all day long I have a lot of fun with the different things I get, like Crayola, granola, all kinds of things. But as Judy said, my background is as a therapist and an organizational psychologist, and I'm really here today to hopefully provide some thought-provoking information. I'm not going to be able to solve everybody's everything, but I'm hoping that you have some nuggets that you take away that might be useful for you. And I'm seeing things come into the chat. You're seeing notes instead of slides.
Yeah, we're
Okay,
seeing
thank
your,
you.
yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, the
I
joy
don't
of
know what
Zoom
happened there.
sometimes. Yeah.
Yes. Is that better?
Yay. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Um, so what I wanted to do, and I'm going to ask for Judy's help here, and I know it might be a little bit challenging because people are just popping in at different times. So this is going to be an interactive time spent together. And I thought we could just do a little bit of a quick meet and greet. And I did this with the session at TMU just now, and getting people paired up and just getting some energy and getting us sort of situated in here, kind of like a speed dating. So I'm going to put these questions in the breakout room. You can use them or not, but you'll each have 3 minutes to just introduce yourselves using the question prompts if you choose. Okay, Judy, is that good for us to sort of go in now with that? And you are off mic.
Yeah, I'm
There we
doing
go.
my famous. I do this often. I talk when I'm not on mic. Anywho, let's put them over into the breakout group. So you're going to have 3 minutes each to talk about where you were born, what's your favorite food, what's your least favorite food, one activity outside of work that you enjoy, what other interests do you have? So this is a lovely chance for you to meet other expansive women. We're going to send you over there for 6 minutes now.
Okay, I see Roxelle and people are back. I'm just curious if you want to come on mic or if you want to pop in the chat. What was that like for you?
I always enjoy these kinds of icebreakers. It gives us a chance to meet each other and learn about each other. So
Yeah, thank you,
thank
Roxelle.
you.
Any other thoughts?
I just love meeting new people, and I just thought it was really cool that my that Laura was from Canada, which is so far away from me in San Antonio, Texas. So that's always an interesting thing to hang out and chat with somebody who is, we're right here in the room, but so far away in person, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that I love that insight. Thank you, Sarah. And I'm getting some things in the chat. Beautiful to meet new people and hear about them. And Glenn put one of those emojis with the smiling face and the heart. So thank you. I really wanted you to meet each other, and there was a real purpose for this. So you noticed that we didn't talk about where do you work. That wasn't one of the questions. You could go there if you chose to, but that wasn't one of the questions. I didn't ask you what's your role, what's your title, how long have you been working, any of that. And one important tool in making time and taking time and in terms of contributing to our well-being is connection. And I was just talking to Judy about this. So I thought I'd start there. Like, isolation has become an epidemic since COVID. I hear about it every day. It's interesting. I work with a lot of different clients, and people that you would least suspect are talking about how lonely they feel. And we're overworking more than ever. We've lost touch with ourselves. We've lost touch with each other. And many of my clients are women in leadership. And even that alone, outside of COVID, they found that success at work has resulted in a decrease in their social circle and the time that they spend with friends. And this is unfortunate because as human beings, we biologically are primed. We get a bump in our mood and our mental health when we're connecting, even if it's a stranger. And some of the interesting research I was reading the other day talked about making eye contact, and even a nod or a smile gives you that bit of a dopamine boost. And sometimes we feel it, sometimes we don't. But most people, if you wave, they'll wave. Everybody waves back. They may not wave to you to initiate, but they'll wave back. And so a big part of what I wanted to just context set for today was this whole idea of connection, because we're at our best when we are social. And our brains work best when they're in connection with other human brains. And research has also shown something as simple as, it's interesting what social scientists will research, right? But cashing out at the grocery store, people are just so hurried, they pay, they leave. And they studied the people who just hurried and paid and leave. And they studied the people who had a chat. Roxelle, how are you doing? Even if I don't know you. And then they took mood measurements. And they found that even a brief smile, a brief bit of eye contact, a brief conversation had a positive effect on the people who were engaging in that. It could be the barista at the coffee shop, or it could be the cashier at the grocery store. So not just the person who's initiating, but also the person who's receiving. And even here, like saying hi to neighbors. I know when we moved into this neighborhood, I'm from Bermuda, we say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Everybody now, as I'm out for my walk, Cranla, good morning, so you can start a whole revolution just by waving your hand. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. I just was really curious. I had said to Judy, if we could do a little bit of a poll, I'd just be interested to hear from you where you're at with some of this. So are you able to set up a poll, Judy, that just asks the simple yes or no question? Are you happy with the current balance of your work life and personal life at this time? And this will just give us a bit of a gauge of where we're at and where we're starting from. So yeah, 86% no. And it's not that it's about right or wrong. It's just about where are we starting from? What's our current situation? How are we feeling? And this whole concept of, you probably heard lots of different terms, right? This whole concept of work-life balance, I think it was around 2006. It was Greenhouse and Allen, and they defined work-life balance as the degree to which an individual's effectiveness and satisfaction in the roles in work and life are well matched to the person's priorities. So when you simply put, work-life balance is the ability to separate work from your personal life. And we all know that became really challenging, right? In COVID, the pandemic, sheltering in place. And sometimes you'll hear the terms like work-life harmony. That refers to a state of achieving both professional and personal goals. You might hear work-life integration. And that refers to allowing employees to coordinate their personal and professional lives in complementary ways that fulfill all sets of their responsibilities. So when we look at the conditions that are involved in being able to create this balance, there's sort of three areas, and we're going to focus on one today, but I'm going to tell you what all three are. The first is allocating your resources, such as time and energy, to create healthy outcomes. The second is manage your emotions. And at the Institute, that's really what I taught. I taught a lot about emotional and social intelligence and how that was a contributor to our well-being, being, self-awareness, emotional regulation, emotional connection. And the third is realistically assessing your role at work and at home. And today we're going to focus on time and energy. And the reason this is important, when we look at the data, 76% of women, and I think it's something like 65% of men, believe that work-life balance is important. And in a survey that was done by the Good Work, the majority of respondents, 54 to 55%, they claim that work makes it difficult for them to relax. So it's really interesting, right? We want this sense of well-being. Most people do. We want this sense of work-life balance, but work kind of gets in the way with the complexities and the workloads. So we need to take a look at that. So why are we really talking about this today? I coach a lot of, and I know that Judy does as well, and she'll jump in and add pieces to this, but I coach a lot of women. I do a little bit of counseling still, but it's mostly coaching. And the kinds of things that I hear are, we're answering work emails at night. I work with a lot of professional services firms, and there's women in leadership. They're answering emails at 10, 11 o'clock at night. And that's become their norm. On the weekend, when they're running out to lunch, to the grocery store to pick things up for their family. We're responding to instant messages and emails when we're in virtual calls or meetings. And we read articles about how to hack into our brains. And I do the same, right? We want to be more productive. We want to be efficient. And we've become these creatures of doing. And we've lost our ability to simply be. You've probably heard that a lot, sort of in the mindfulness movement. And every year, a new survey shows people are more isolated and depressed than ever. And then on the other side, we also see surveys that show that we're craving joy and satisfaction, and we're searching for these external solutions to our internal experiences. And what current data on the state of work and the workplace shows is that we're overworked, overstressed, exhausted, and dissatisfied. No matter how many extra hours we work, we continue to remain unfulfilled. And we try to solve these conditions by using the same tools in our personal lives that we do to create efficiencies at work, right? So this whole idea of, I have humans, not machines, this whole idea of looking at ourselves as these machines that need to be driven and amped up and hacked into, our brains are not really taking kindly to that. And we've, invited this, I'm going to talk about it in a minute, this continual surge of neurochemicals that are biologically only meant to show up when we're under threat, when we need to fight, when we need to flee, when we need to be safe. And then what's happening to us on a daily basis is that we're living with an internal sea of hormones that, if left unchecked and not cleared, can really become harmful to us. So my hope in this next, 30 minutes is to share some information, have some interaction, and have you take hopefully something away for yourselves that will be a useful tool for you. I was thinking about, what do I need to talk about with a group of women such as yourselves, right? I hear a lot about multitasking. So I thought, let me talk about that a little bit, because there's so much to focus on. But let me touch on this chronic situation that comes up time and time again in my work. Cranla, I'm multitasking. And as women, many of us often do attempt to multitask, right? We truly believe that it's an efficient and effective way to get things done. And I'm here to burst the bubble. Multitasking is an absolute illusion. Time and time again, research has shown us that the human brain cannot work on and focus on two things or more at once. It just can't. It's a fallacy. We cannot do it. What we actually are doing is we're rapidly switching from one task to another, and that's called divided attention. We're not fully focusing on any one thing. And in study after study, results show that what happens, and we don't even tune into it, we're actually slower at completing tasks when we're switching from one to another. We don't see it. And people who think of themselves as heavy multitaskers, actually, when they start to study them from a brain level perspective, they're less organized mentally. They're also worse at distinguishing useful information. And over time, these cognitive processes become impaired. And I'm seeing something popping up in the chat. Oh, totally agree. Yes, thank you, Roxelle. And, I'm not here to wag a finger at anybody, because but for the grace of God is me. And that's why I do this work, because I have been here and I've constantly trying not to be in the trap. So, we also become worse at distinguishing useful information. And what happens is we're not noticing that there's impacts to our memories, there's impacts to how we're organizing information. So the cost of the attempt to multitasking is actually so high that the American Psychological Association has recommended that we choose strategies that boost our brain's efficiencies and avoid multitasking, especially when it's coming to complex tasks and activities that we're involved in. So the answer is focus. And there's a really great, book around that. There's lots of information around that. This isn't earth shattering. We know it. But something to consider, a small thing, is if you close every tab in your browser. I always have like 25 open. I need to close every tab in my browser, put my phone on silent, close my email inbox. You know what we know from research? You will finish that report in significantly less time than if all of those things are open, because they're distractions. So I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. I'm sure of it. So when we look at the neurobiology of stress and overwork, you've probably read about and heard about the impacts of prolonged stress and burnout. we experience a change in our hormones and our neurochemistry that really does require us to look at that, right? This cocktail is designed to keep us safe. So when we are in danger, we can run, as I was saying before, when there's something that's a threat to us, or we can fight to defend ourselves. And the danger in our current society is that we're all living in this prolonged exposure to this neurochemical, neurobiological cocktail. We've all heard about the dangers of cortisol. It creates changes to our immune system. Not a lot of people understand that, right? It also suppresses the digestive system. People hear cortisol, weight gain, but they're not understanding what's happening systemically to us. It even impacts our reproductive system and our growth processes. So because it also involves our blood sugar, somebody's trying to get in there. Because it involves our blood sugar levels over time, this is what can lead to weight gain. It can also lead to diabetes. So it's a really useful hormone. If we use it, get what we have done, and then it clears, but it really can be debilitating and damaging if it's coursing through us. And many of us have had high cortisol levels. I've had mine done for years now, at least since 2020, because we're overworking, we're trying to get so many things done, and we're adapting to the new normal, whatever that happens to be in your organization. When adrenaline is coursing through our system, we know our heart beats faster. There's been an increase in heart disease amongst women in the last 4 to 5 years. Our blood vessels send more blood to our brain, to our muscles. Our blood pressure increases. That's why there's data coming out around women at risk for stroke. Our brain becomes more alert. And this also raises our blood sugar levels for energy. Over time, our adrenal glands poop out. I saw my naturopath, I think it was when we moved to Stratford 20 years ago, and she said, your adrenal glands are pooped out. So I'm just using that language because I think it's, I don't know, the official naturopathic term. I'm just kidding. But that's what I was told. They were not working. Like, that's a real concern, right? And then you have norepinephrine, also known as noradrenaline. And stress triggers the release of this from our adrenal glands. And this reaction to stress causes so many different changes in our bodies. This whole idea of norepinephrine coursing, it's so that we're alert and we're attentive. Well, what happens over time, right? Our sleep-wake cycle is interrupted. How many people are talking about insomnia? And then you'd mentioned menopause, Judy. Let's layer that on there so we can all wake up at 3 and 4 in the morning. Mood and memory are impacted. So normally, when the threat has passed, these neurochemicals and hormones return to normal levels. When stressors are present, however, the fight or flight reaction stays on. And what's happening now in our workplaces is demands of workload, demands of trying to balance work with family. These are the new threats. Reorganization. Right? Am I going to be downsized, outsized, right-sized out? So all day long, we're experiencing this cocktail. And the long-term, activation of the stress response leads to things like anxiety. I mentioned that before, digestive problems, depression, this isolation, headaches. I was talking to somebody yesterday about this headache and her stomach issues, heart disease we talked about. So that's why it's important for us to take a look today at some healthy ways that we can take this on. And that's why I'm saying, even if you take one thing away that will help you to punctuate whatever may be going on for you, I will be very grateful, because one of my values is doing meaningful work and being of service. So what does overwork sound like? And I just put in a couple of things here that I've been hearing lately. Working with my clients who are primarily women in leadership, I often ask questions like, who are you without your title? And I'll tell you, I often experience tears. How much time in a day do you have just for yourself? I often experience tears. What do you do outside of work that brings you joy? Again, I often experience tears. And I hear things like, I don't know who I am anymore. I used to be fun. I used to have fun. I don't have time for anything outside of work. And the impetus for one of my clients to make a sweeping change in her approach to each day was her 10-year-old daughter said one morning, "Mom, I get up and you're on your computer. I leave for school and you're on your computer. I come home and you're on your computer. I feel so sorry for you." So not all of us have this reality check, right? We need to be that for ourselves. So let's talk about, what are some of the things that we can do in terms of allocating time and effort. And I'm watching the time go by. An hour goes by quickly, doesn't it? So this whole, I said to Judy, I love that she came up with this making time and taking time. That's her being so witty and clever and the brand specialist that she is. And, when I'm coaching on time and effort as a need for a client, the first question I ask is, what will you decide not to spend time on? No one has time for everything. And that's really hard for folks. It's hard for me. What will I choose not to spend time on? So no matter how efficient we are with our time, we won't have the ability to do everything we want to do in a day. And the sooner we embrace that truth, the better, we can decrease our anxiety, any feelings of inadequacy we have. I often say the work will never all get done. So that really, for me, was a huge acceptance when I was in my VP role. This meant for me decreasing the number of meetings I attended. I was completely meetinged out. I took inventory and asked all the meeting holders, do I need to be at that meeting? Do I need to be at this meeting? Do I need to be at that meeting? What's on the agenda? I got a little bit more curious. I got a little bit more invested, I did a little bit more investigation. And then I attended the ones that were must shows for me. And for others, I politely declined. And it was really interesting because it wasn't like people were hounding me, you must be at that meeting. I'm like, is that how easy it is? I just have to assess and then I can decline. And then where it was necessary for our team to be represented, like I might send someone from my team to attend, take notes, report back, that kind of thing. And then on the home front, it's meant having someone clean, our house. And even once a month is a help. And I know not everyone has the means to do this. I'm grateful that we are in a position that we can and we do. But part of it for me, and Judy and I were sort of teeing things up, and she talked about guilt. Part of it for me was I had this whole mental block and I felt really guilty. Like my mother, my grandmother, they never had a cleaning person, a cleaning service. Like they were able to manage their households without a cleaning service. What's going on with me? So I learned about how to think of my time as an investment, the same way we invest our money. And most of us really try to be very judicious with dollars, right? So what I see is people over investing in work and under investing in things like sleep and rest and exercise and peacefulness and mindfulness and relationships. These are the areas that actually pay huge dividends for us. These are the areas that bring the greatest return on investment and actually allow us to show up with the energy and being clear-minded and creative and productive and joyful and fulfilled across so many life domains. And so what happens is when we get derailed, we've forgotten how to do things like set up an automatic system. Like many of us might set up an automatic investment or saving system where something comes out of your bank account and it goes into you don't even see it. It's gone, right? It's automatic. You don't have to think about it. And just like you would do that for investing or saving, I invite you to consider setting up recurring appointments like with yourself, for yourself. At work, it might be to ensure that you have like a set amount of time set aside for focused report writing every week. I know that was one of mine. Because if I didn't have it in there, somehow I'm doing my reports at night because people were all day long. I also would have time in the morning. That's when I would check my email, time in the middle of the day and time at night. I wasn't on it all day. If I was engaged in a meeting, I would show my engagement or I'm not available in the instant messaging system. And I helped people to respect those boundaries. It was not easy because I would put like a 45-minute block for my lunch and people were constantly trying to book meetings on top of that. until I held firm and said, no, that's my lunchtime, and I really need that for my well-being. And so I taught people how to treat me in that way. And outside of work, it might be, an exercise class, time to walk. You get the idea. So I'm not telling you anything new. I'm just trying to put it in a system that you might want to consider thinking about it a little differently. And then the last thought here is, when you approach an item that you think you need to do, I invite you to consider, is it an investment activity? Is it neutral? Is it an optimized activity? And the difference here is that investment activities are areas where an increased amount of time and a higher quality of work will more likely lead to exponential payoffs. So in my job as VP, an investment activity would be something like strategic planning. I needed to have a good amount of time. I needed to do quality work that was setting the company up for success. So I needed to make sure I had that blocked in. And then outside of work, I have 4 children and 4 grandchildren. So I still do this, right? Spending quality time, no devices, no distractions with family. That's considered my personal investment activity. And then when you look at neutral activities, these just need to get done in a proper, sort of appropriate way. More time spent on them is not going to yield any kind of increased payoff. So things like, going to the gym, you can be there an hour, you can be there for 90 minutes. They say that there's this point of diminishing returns. So these are the things you just need to get done. And at work, it might be, like a project meeting or something like that. They don't carry as much weight. You don't need to put in as much extraordinary time and effort. And then the last one, and I really don't know why it's called optimized activities. I have been meaning for years to reach out to the author to understand this, but optimized activities are those which time is spent and it leads to no added value. It keeps us from doing other more valuable activities. And this would be like things like basic administration work. Focus on getting it done, get it off your plate and out of your head. So when we look now at just some thoughts and suggestions for next steps, something you can try, and Elizabeth Grace Saunders goes into this in a lot of detail in her work, but the goal is to minimize the time spent on optimized activities and maximize your time on investment activities. And so you need to have a process where you're actually discerning around this. So you could start each week defining the most important investment activities, block out time on your calendar, complete them early in the week and as early in the day as possible. And that's a whole brain science thing. Do you have to read? You have to do numbers? All that stuff should be done as early in the day as possible. And when you look over your daily to-do list, you can proactively discern, is this investment? Is this neutral? Is this optimized? And you can, because we all have to-do lists, I bet you, if it's in a spreadsheet, if it's on a piece of paper, I bet you we all have our version of this. So my offer to you is to get discerning about how and where you're spending your time. The other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about, and I'm watching the time, is rest. And the reason this is really important to me is because, we've set the stage for why it's important to take a step back and remember that we need to be in service of ourselves as human beings because we're not machines. We need rest. And many of my clients are women who have worked hard in high school to get into university or college. Then they've worked super hard in post-secondary to demonstrate their intellect and their abilities. And then they get into the workforce and are still working hard to prove their worth, to be productive, to make a difference. And we're exhausted. And we try to address this ongoing sense of fatigue and lack of energy by, I need to get more sleep. I'm going to focus on my 8 hours. And that's important. However, we then find we're still exhausted. So what is happening? That's because sleep and rest are not the same thing. We're suffering from both a sleep deficit and a rest deficit in North America. directly connected to the ways in which we approach our work. So I'm going to go through these quickly because I don't know that we're going to have 10 minutes to do a breakout, Judy. I know you have some questions and thoughts, and I want to make sure we get them in here. But this is really important that I share. So when we think about physical rest can be passive, like sleeping or napping, can actually be active, like yoga is an example, or a massage is an example of this idea of more active physical rest. Mental rest, in the midst of heavy loads, we often struggle to turn off our brains. We mull over conversations we've had in the day. We look at what's left on our to-do list, whatever that is for you. And some ideas for carving out mental rest is to take breaks every hour or two throughout the day. And I have people go, I can't do that. Can you take 2 to 3 minutes after every hour or two in a day, where you physically get up from your desk and your computer and you just do something else for another 2 to 5 minutes? That's all it takes for your brain to stop feeling so scrambled and actually come back into sync. And those nagging thoughts that come at bedtime, I used to keep a notepad beside my bed to make sure I jotted them down, got them out of my head so I could have a good sleep. So that's the idea of mental rest. Sensory rest, all of our brains are overstimulated by technology, whether we know it, acknowledge it or not. And on top of computers and smartphones, we need to filter out background noise. We need to process conversations. When it's on Zoom, we need to visually be attuned. We're trying to figure out body language. It's a lot harder to do. It's exhausting. It's in a lot of the current literature. And so our brains are overstimulated by technology. One of the things you can do to help here is to simply close your eyes for 2 minutes. Again, every 1 to 2 hours. Some people I know go into full digital detox mode. I'm off everything all weekend. And where you completely unplug for an extended period of time. That's an option too. It's an example of sensory rest. One of my clients, the one who was answering emails at 11 o'clock at night to the partners, she separated her phones because this was it was going off. And she was like, I've got to answer it. So it was hard for her, but she separated her phone. She got a personal phone where she did not receive any Teams instant messages or work emails. Family or friends could call her there. And let's go back to our talk about connection, really health promoting for her. Her kids could text her there. And she ended up putting meditation apps on that phone, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. So she had them separate. So that's that idea of trying to set out sensory rest for yourself. Creative rest is about awe and wonder. And I still remember how I felt the first time I saw the Rocky Mountains. This is about enjoying and appreciating nature, taking in beauty, setting time aside to water your plants or deadhead or whatever. My husband called me this morning before I was getting on the session to teach at 10. He said, you have to see this. And I did not know what was going on. And we sat for 3 minutes and just watched this nest that we didn't know that was in a tree right outside the window. He had sat in a different place than I usually sit, and he had seen this bird. Look at the robin. These are examples of creative rest, connecting to the outdoors. And it's also about the arts, right? And music. We know that that can be soothing and healthful for us. Plays, visual arts, museums, art galleries. That's why we have them. And what they do for us is they delight our senses and create this openness, right? This sense of expression. When we look at emotional rest, that's the time and space to be with your emotions, to tune into how you're really feeling. This is when where journaling comes in. I saw you had something on journaling that went out to your distribution list, Judy. So this is where this emotional piece, really tuning into how you're feeling and honoring that. A big part of why we're exhausted is we are not playing our emotions all the way through. We blunt them. And it's really tiring not to have them go all the way through us and just accept what's there. So it really requires courage and authenticity for us to stop people pleasing and to be authentic. So that would be the outward piece. And the other is to acknowledge what's there for us. Social rest is when we sort of sink into and nourish ourselves with relationships that revive us instead of spending time in relationships that deplete us. When I turned 40, my friend reminded me about this the other day. I went through a significant process of pruning relationships. Not only was I going through a challenging divorce at the time, but I really found out who my friends were. And I held on to the friends where there was care and reciprocity. And I cut loose those that had historically been draining me emotionally for years. I didn't see it until that time. So that's that idea of social rest, putting yourselves in situations that nurture and feed you and enliven you. And the final one is spiritual rest, and that involves connecting beyond the physical and intellectual by engaging in something that's greater than ourselves. For some people, it might be prayer. For other people, it might be a chant or some kind of ritual, a meditation. So, the idea here is to connect to higher purpose, to accept what's here and feel just a sense of love and connection and belonging. So this is from Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith. It's really, really great work. And the whole reason I wanted to share this is because I have a lot of clients who come to sessions and say, I'm going to work on my 8-hour sleep. And so it becomes a yes and. Sleep alone cannot restore us to a state of feeling and being rested. So as you explore what rest means for you, please keep in mind that rest should also equal restoration. And I can see that I was very ambitious in what I thought we could cover today. So I'm going to go to one other piece, and then I'll turn it over to you, Judy. You had talked about Sojourn in the invitation. So I wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to just talk about that briefly. So sojourn means a little stay or a short visit. It means a little respite. And I have a co-creative partner who lives in the Chicago area. And she and I have developed Sojourn, an offsite experience for women in leadership. And that's where we provide what we call a place to exhale. We do breath work there to nourish. It's our soul, it's our bodies through food, through interaction, through content and learning, and an opportunity to recharge and connect with, ourselves as women, not as a leader, not a mom, a daughter, a partner, to connect with ourselves as human beings and to connect with others. And so Judy's going to send some information about this. I think the things that I would want to just share off the top is that you've heard me talk a little bit about brain science. And so we've really constructed this from a brain science perspective. So what you learn about is based in brain science. The way we teach it is brain-based learning. And we tackle really deep-rooted patterns. So we talk about mindsets and mental models. We talk about values. We work on beliefs and habits. And that becomes the foundation for the sustainable change that people create. So the next one is coming up in September. That will be on the brochure. And we actually keep our cohorts very small. So 8 to 20, depending on the location. And this one, the picture's not that clear as I blow it up, but this one is in Asheville, North Carolina. And it's called Horseshoe Farm. And it's just it's that whole idea, right, of getting into creative rest and being in a space of wonder and awe and connection and building our community and networking in a place that is not a conference or a leadership workshop for women. So I obviously had a lot more, Judy. I will pause there and thank everyone for, your attention and for being here today.
You gave us so much, Cranla. Thank you. You have redefined how I think about rest for starters. It's like, I was like, I should just go to sleep. And then, of course, because I'm menopausal, I was like, that's not happening. This is like, there's other ways. There's other ways to get some rest. So we do have 2 minutes left. I just wanted to ask you, because we were talking about guilt before, and it's such a big factor for so many women. As a solopreneur, I feel guilty when I'm not working. So even, how do we overcome that feeling of guilt that if we take time for ourselves, somehow that's wrong?
Yeah, I think it's a big thing. And that's why when we created Sojourn, we talked about celebrating ourselves privately and publicly. because we're socialized. That's the biggest piece of this, right? We are socialized as women to be doing. We are socialized as women to not necessarily be being. Do not sit idly by. So whether it's in the workplace or in the home, this is where that whole sense of emotional labor and the emotional tax of being a woman comes in.
Yeah.
I must be doing something. I must be doing something. And so, I mean, we can work through the guilt, I'm hoping, by helping people to see the value in things like rest and things like managing time and things like leisure. So at Sojourn, we actually have someone who's a leisure specialist who does an assessment with everybody and then works through that, because my clients have zero leisure. They can't remember the time they did anything fun. Now, that's not for all women, but the women who are in leadership roles often, who are working like you and I, and 40 and 50 and 60 hours a week, they don't have time. And so we talk about, beyond the bubble bath, et cetera, like what can you do? And then it becomes a part of your makeup. It really becomes, okay, I'm going to make this commitment to myself. And then I feel guilty if I don't do it. So probably about 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, I started to go for a massage every single month. And I had people going, that's luxurious, that's frivolous, that's blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that helps me to stand up straight, not have headaches, and contribute to my well-being. That's what that is. And when I don't go, I feel guilty. Oh, I had to miss a month because I was such and so. So I think it takes time, because we're socialized to be giving and doing. And when we see that that's the answer, it's just this time for ourselves. I mean, when I talked about, and I know we're at time, asking my clients, like, where's the time in the day for themselves? And many of them who have children will say, I found 20 minutes. And I ask what they did, and they made sandwiches for the next day. Right? So we need to kind of work on the time and energy allotment, create the space for whatever they're going to step into. And many people need help with this, even just to identify, I'm going to read 20 pages a day or write in a journal. And then you start to grow from there. That's where we do the habit stacking. It grows from there.
I love this. I love the notion of flipping it. I like to flip things. So to say you should, I would feel guilty if I didn't take this time to myself. I find that very, very powerful. Cranla, thank you oh my goodness, that was so amazing. And I love hearing your perspective on women and how we can show up for ourselves and as well as for others. And I know that you are a person like me who loves service and to be useful. And let me tell you, that was amazing and so beautiful. And I wish you lots of beautiful rest in Bermuda.
Thank you.
Time in
you.
nature, time connecting, all of that. That was amazing. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Cranla.
very much.
And thank you to all of you for coming. I will make a recording available so that you can share it with whoever you want or review some of the excellent points that came up today. It was so lovely to see you all. Thank you. And thank you, Cranla.
Yeah, and thank you for the comments. And I would also offer, if we're not connected on LinkedIn, please do, because I often find really cool things that I like to just share there. And they may be articles that I've had many people send me a private message and say, I needed that today. That's what I needed today. You sent something on leisure, you posted something on this, and I didn't know I needed it, but that's what I needed. So let's make sure we're connected. I'm really thrilled to be a member of the advisory board of Expansive Women Network. So thanks, everyone. Such a pleasure.